Next on Currents News, New York City Hall Park is cleared of protesters after camping out there for weeks.
It was time to take action.
Christopher Columbus was knocked down, but he's not out. Baltimore's Knights of Columbus is creating a new and better monument.
It will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better.
With that presidential warning, there's also word about a vaccine that could be out by year's end.
Millions of New Yorkers are finding themselves unemployed. I'm Jessica Easthope with how photographers are helping them stand out as they look for new work.
Plus, kids are spending more time on their screens than ever. There's advice for parents. The news starts right now. Good evening, I'm Christine Persichetti. Protesters are no longer occupying City Hall Park. Early this morning, police cleared out the park where protesters have been camped out for weeks and started cleaning up what they left behind. City sanitation workers spent the day cleaning up City Hall Park, removing the anti-police graffiti that's covered the sidewalks since protesters set up camp in the park some 3 weeks ago. Those protesters have also been cleared out.
We are horrified at what we see here.
Taylor Banning didn't camp here, but did join the protests. She called it disturbing that the NYPD showed up at 3 a.m. and forced the protesters to leave.
This is a disrespect to Black lives. This is disrespect to the movement, to every single person who's been out here showing love, showing protest, showing freedom to assemble.
The so-called Occupy City Hall protesters assembled here, calling for the police to be defunded. But Mayor Bill de Blasio says over the last few weeks, the gathering got smaller with fewer protesters and more homeless people.
We do always respect the right to protest, but we have to think about health and safety first, and the health and safety issues were growing. So it was time to take action.
The mayor was asked about the slow response in removing the anti-police graffiti here, but quick response to cleaning up the vandalized Black Lives Matter murals.
Each situation, though, is different, and this was a particularly complex situation down here. Look, I made very clear that graffiti on those public buildings in this area is being cleaned up right now as we speak. It's not acceptable. It will be gone.
Police Commissioner Dermot Shea says he couldn't be happier with how his cops responded overnight, with no injuries and no real use of force.
A number of individuals did not want to leave. The result was one arrest for attempted assault where a brick was thrown at an officer. Luckily, that officer had a shield. It left a dent, I'm told, in the shield, but nobody was injured.
We're told the cleanup could take several weeks, and the mayor says Homeless Services has been making efforts to get those who were in the park and are homeless into shelters. Democrats in the House are voting to kick Confederate statues out of the U.S. Capitol. Throughout the building, there are dozens honoring the likes of General Robert E. Lee and Confederate President Jefferson Davis. House Majority Leader Steny Hoyer says that goes against the idea that Black lives matter.
So when we assert that, yes, they do matter, it is out of conviction and conscience and appropriateness that in America, the land of the free and the home of the brave, that the land of the free include all of us. These statues must be relegated to the dark places of a shameful stain on our history.
The Senate also needs to pass the bill for it to take effect. Some Republicans are pushing back against congressional action, saying it should be left up to the states. Each state selects 2 statues to go on display in the Capitol's National Statuary Hall collection. Speaking of statues, the one of Christopher Columbus that was knocked down and thrown into Baltimore's harbor is going to be replaced. The Knights of Columbus are leading the drive to replace the smashed icon with a new marble monument. President Ronald Reagan, standing alongside then Baltimore Archbishop William Borders, dedicated the original statue in 1984. The Columbus Memorial is one of dozens of historical monuments that have been toppled or vandalized across the country recently. St. Junipero Serra could soon be erased from the official seal of California's Ventura County. His image dominates the left side of the emblem, but some lawmakers want it to go. The priest in charge of the last mission founded by St. Serra is saying wait. Father Tom Elawat is telling county officials to study history, pointing out that the actions and writings of St. Sarah show his love and care of indigenous people in California. Several Sarah statues have been the focus of protests across the state in recent weeks by critics of the saint's missionary work. Tonight, Chicago cops are questioning someone in connection with the drive-by shooting that left 15 people wounded at a funeral home. The violence happening during a ceremony for a man killed in an earlier drive-by shooting. Chicago's police chief is blaming gangs. The city's mayor, Lori Lightfoot, is declaring she won't allow President Trump to deploy federal agents to crack down on Windy City crime. She says that would terrorize Chicago's residents. As for the president and the coronavirus crisis, he's now urging all Americans to wear a face mask if they can't keep socially distant. He's worried about the spread.
It will probably, unfortunately, get worse before it gets better. Something I don't like saying about things, but that's the way it is. It's what we have. You look over the world, it's all over the world.
The biggest hotspot in the United States right now is California. There are more than 409,000 confirmed coronavirus cases, exceeding New York's total by about 1,000. A convent outside Detroit is suffering devastating losses from the virus. 13 sisters have died from the disease, with a dozen passing away in 1 month. They were members of the Felician Sisters in Livonia, Michigan. The first death was on Good Friday, a nun who was 99 years old. The youngest victim was 69. We could be closer to getting a coronavirus vaccine. The White House is paying drug giant Pfizer and a German biotech firm close to $2 billion for up to 600 million doses. If the vaccine works and is approved, 100 million doses could be available in December. We apparently won't have to pay for it. The other big crisis linked to the pandemic is the enormous number of American jobs that have been destroyed. In Washington, lawmakers are fighting over how to help out-of-work citizens survive their losses. Nadia Romero has the story from the White House.
Our nation stands at a crucial midway point in our battle against this terrible virus.
It's not just coronavirus Senate Republicans are battling, but also the White House.
It's hard to negotiate when the president says one thing, Senate Republicans say another, and many of them are divided.
Divided over what should and shouldn't be in the next round of COVID relief legislation. Senate Republicans are focused on three main goals:
Kids, jobs, and health care.
Included in the roughly $1 trillion plan is funding to safely reopen schools, tax credits and incentives to businesses, and stimulus checks to Americans.
Direct payments to help American families keep driving our national comeback.
One thing the majority leader didn't mention is a priority for the president.
The president was very clear that he would like to see a payroll tax in there.
But it's something many Republican senators are against.
There are some differences of opinion on the question of the payroll tax cut and whether that's the best way to go.
As the Trump administration and Senate Republicans work towards a deal, Democrats wait in the wings.
Let's get going. It's over 60 days since the House passed the HEROES Act, which is a strong, bold, and comprehensive proposal.
The legislation is expected to be the second largest economic rescue package in U.S. history, second only to the first measure passed earlier this year. But before Americans receive much-needed aid, Democrats, Republicans, and the White House must compromise. At the White House, Nadia Romero, Currents News.
A new allegation of sexual abuse is being made against Theodore McCarrick. The victim's survivor's name is not being revealed. In a lawsuit, he accuses McCarrick of abusing him when he was a teenager in 1982 at a New Jersey beach house. His lawyer, Jeff Anderson, says his client has contacted authorities.
In every instance, the survivors with whom we work and have been working always work with law enforcement to do what can be done to report to them the information that's been had and what is active in terms of current criminal investigation remains to be revealed by those that are doing that.
McCarrick was laicized from the clerical state by Pope Francis in February of 2019. He had been a cardinal and was the Archbishop Emeritus of Washington, D.C. In October of 2018, the Pope ordered, quote, a thorough study of all the relevant facts surrounding McCarrick. The results of that investigation have yet to be released. This Friday, a former church and museum in Istanbul will be converted to a mosque. So the U.S. Conference of Catholic Bishops has declared Friday, July 24th, a day of mourning for Hagia Sophia. The bishops say they join Pope Francis in expressing deep sadness over Turkish President Recep Erdogan's decision to make the change. They say for years, Hagia Sophia stood as a sign of peaceful coexistence between Christians and Muslims. There's a lot more news headed your way. A picture is worth 1,000 words and maybe even a new job. The story of a photographer who's helping put people back into the workforce. Plus, cops helping other first responders feel safe while working during the pandemic. And a real-life Rosie the Riveter is back to work helping the country once again. We'll introduce you. Stay with us.
Now you can help us put your faith in the news. The next time you capture a newsworthy event, send us your pictures or video. It's easy. Go to netny.tv/send us, and you may see your submission on Currents News.
As millions of people continue to file for unemployment every week, a local photographer is using his God-given talents for the greater good. He's hoping free headshots give everyone a head start in the job market. Currents News' Jessica Easthope has the story from Midtown Manhattan.
The pandemic has left an estimated 1.5 million New Yorkers out of a job.
You should be a model instead of a producer.
But some feel they're still not out of that big city luck. That maybe these headshots could give them the head start they need to get back to business.
We don't only uplift their chances and their hopes for employment, but also the spirit that they lost during the pandemic. Okay, very good. You're doing great.
MATIBAG was working hard Wednesday, taking professional headshots with the 10,000 Headshot Initiative.
Chin up just a tiny bit.
200 photographers in locations across the country taking headshots free of charge to help people gain a job.
I love your eyes.
And some self-esteem.
So this is a great idea to actually give back, especially among us photographers who has also been there. Chin down a bit.
MATIBAG knows the feeling well of being lost and sometimes having to reinvent yourself.
Beautiful.
He was once in the seminary preparing to be a Catholic priest. Now he's fighting on the front lines of the pandemic as a nurse. And photography is his passion.
That's one right there.
This month, New York City's unemployment rate rose to more than 20%, and nationwide, around 11% of people are out of work. This quick click can be costly. Headshots average $400 to $500, making this opportunity a godsend for people like Persephone Anastasopoulos, an architect who was laid off.
Definitely having a professional photo makes a world of difference in terms of the presentation you put forth.
According to LinkedIn, people who have a professional headshot on their profiles get 21 times more views and 9 times as many connection requests as those who don't. But some who came down Wednesday worry their jobs won't exist after the crisis ends. Carmen Corzo is an event planner, and she thinks the industry may never fully recover.
I think a lot of us are going to have to venture out to different fields and find completely different jobs. So that's why I'm grateful that I had this opportunity to get a photo and just be able to update my resume.
The goal is 10,000 headshots in one day. But what Rom and the other photographers are really hoping to accomplish is a boost in confidence.
Okay, you're doing great.
In Manhattan, Jessica Easthope, Currents News.
Besides immediate fears about the job market, many Americans are worried that life as we know it may stay changed forever. According to a new survey, 75% of Americans worry life will never return to what it once was. When asked what they imagine life will be like after the virus passes, many said they expect workplaces to change dramatically. Furthermore, nearly 60% said they are too afraid to even return to their workplace. And things aren't back to normal for children either. Screen time for kids has increased 500% during the pandemic. And according to a recent survey, 85% of moms and dads are adding that to their growing list of concerns. So what can they do? Experts suggest monitoring what your kids watch, stop allowing devices in their bedrooms, and frequently check in with them about online safety and privacy. Frontline safety is the mission that the cops of the New York, New Jersey Port Authority are tackling hands-on. They're working to ensure doctors, nurses, and paramedics are safe and feel that way too. Alexandra Field has the story from Hackensack.
It was like nothing this country had ever seen.
These guys and girls are our heroes. They're out here in the medical profession doing God's work, just trying to save lives.
New York and New Jersey's first responders were doing battle at the epicenter of the COVID crisis before it spread across the country. Were you fearful?
Absolutely. We didn't know what we were dealing with.
The 911 calls kept coming, they kept answering. But at hospitals and among healthcare workers, one question remained.
How do we know we're gonna not get our families sick?
That's when police officers with New York and New Jersey's Port Authority responded with a solution.
We came up with the thought of, hey, let's try to get to the hospital, not only disinfect the ambulances, but disinfect the doctors' and nurses' cars, just to try to do something to help them, because they are the front lines on COVID.
The officers have traveled to hospitals throughout the region, deploying the same chemical disinfectant used to decontaminate patrol cars, using it even to decontaminate healthcare workers' clothes.
It changed the entire morale of the department. They went from being afraid to being a little bit more relaxed.
We were over at Elmhurst in Queens, is one of the hardest hit in New York City, just trying to make a safer environment.
They're just showing up, they say, for the people who show up for them.
It felt good to give back. Like I said, after 9/11, everyone came running to help us.
I was stationed down on Liberty Street for like weeks.
Medics who always race to help, now welcoming a hand.
We're doing 100 to 200 calls a day. We have to make sure that we're definitely getting our trucks disinfected as best as possible to keep both the crews, patients, and everybody safe, and then getting back out on the road and making sure that we're able to respond to help other individuals who are calling.
That was Alexandra Field reporting. The cops are also sanitizing the shuttle buses and personal cars of healthcare workers. The need for face masks is getting one of the original Rosie the Riveters back to work. During World War II, 94-year-old May Cryer helped make warplanes. Now she's making masks. Rosie the Riveter is famously depicted wearing a red polka dot bandana around her head. May is using the same cloth for the facial coverings.
I've always made the polka dot bandanas for we travel. We go to Washington and places, and whenever we do, they love the bandanas. And I was making a lot of them when this virus started, and I just switched over from bandanas to face masks.
Rosie the Riveters were a mainstay on the home front, keeping manufacturing humming when the U.S. military went off to fight. May says today she has over 1,000 requests for her masks and will fill every one. Still to come on Currents News, a woman donates her lottery winnings and ends up richer than before. Also ahead, a familiar hymn spreading love and comfort around the world. Do you have a story idea or want to share a tip? Email us at newstips@desalesmedia.org or call our 24-hour number 718-517-3122. We'll be right back. She had little money in her pocket and the bills were piling up until she won a lotto scratch-off prize. But the Missouri mom's daughter had a better idea of what to do with the winnings. Brian Johnson has the story from Kansas City.
With only $7 to her name and bills way past due, Shatara Sims found a lucky $1 bill and bought a scratch ticket.
She won $100 and I said we should donate it to the police officer that got shot for his family to go eat and see him.
Her daughter Rakaya had the idea.
She's a special child.
Rakaya knows what it's like to hurt.
It's okay.
Her sister was killed in Kansas City in October 2012.
The detectives were really there for us. They was there for us more than anyone I can imagine. They did things they didn't have to do.
Officers sent daily messages, family visits, you name it.
When they came to see my kids, they did a lot. They were father therapists. They were everything.
When Sims donated to help the wounded officer, police were overwhelmed.
To hear her call and just express thanks for no reason other than she's thankful, it's really impactful to us, and it's really touching to us.
It motivates officers to keep serving, which is what they did. They made this GoFundMe account for Sims. So far, it's raised more than $8,000.
Pay my bill.
She says many people don't realize how wonderful officers are until you're the one calling for help.
I never seen the empathy that they had from strangers. They just gave us hope. They were good for us.
That was Brian Johnson reporting, and as if that act of kindness wasn't enough, we should note Shatera didn't leave her name or number when she made the donation. Cops had to track her down in order to thank her. And finally tonight, we leave you with a hymn known by Catholics around the world, Salve Regina. This version, sung by 450 members of a virtual choir spanning 33 countries. Their hope that this beautiful sound will help those feeling the pain of this pandemic. Melissa Butts has that story.
The Chilean foundation Canto Católico have released their version of the Salve Regina online. The hymn was sung by 450 choir members from 33 countries. Salve Regina, Mater Misericordiae, Vita Dulcedo, Espes Nostra Salve. The idea of producing this melody was inspired by the Pope's special Urbi et Orbi speech delivered on March 27th.
We wanted to invite everyone who wished to unite their voices with heaven and entrust themselves to the Blessed Virgin. So we chose this song.
Salve Regina. Salve Regina's lyrics have been attributed to Bernardo di Claraval, but the melody was composed in the 13th century. Elena Maraccini was chosen to be the soloist for this version of the song. She explains while Salve Regina has a simple melody, it's technically difficult to execute it without breaks.
It is easy, but when you want to maintain a consistent depth of tone, without breaking between consonants, vowels, syllables, and making slight inflections, joining phrases that you did not want to cut, it becomes complicated.
Canto Católico did not want to just make a beautiful video. They wanted to transmit a profound message in response to the current pain and fear of hundreds of thousands of people around the world.
We also wanted to share that feeling, that pain, that can only be understood from the cross. We as Christians give meaning to that pain. We are suffering and are having a hard time, but it is to be able to leave it in the hands of God, to look back to Him so that He may give us hope in this difficult moment. It was impressive. I came thinking only of my own part. Then, when I watched the entire video, without knowing what happens next or the final result, it was like a shock. Wow, how impressive.
In addition to songs like this, the Canto Católico Foundation has materials on the role of music in the church on its website and on its YouTube channel. Their idea is to help people meet God through singing in church or on social media.
Beautiful. That was Melissa Butts reporting. The song has been viewed over 500,000 times on YouTube. And that is Currents News. I'm Christine Persichetti. Thank you for joining us because we are putting your faith in the news. Hope to see you again next time.